This
Thank you again.
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you for coming. Our guest today is Sarah Trent. She's a former public defender, company founder, educational development specialist, and member of several legal associations. And at the heart of all of these positions is her passion for cannabis related causes. The rules and regulations regarding cannabis are changing in New Jersey, and tonight she'll be educating us on what's been going on in our state and what we can look forward to. With that said, yes, she is a rock star. Please welcome our own local advocate, Sarah Trent.
Hey guys, I think you all heard my technical difficulty. So my specialty is cannabis and not technology. So thank you for bearing with me as we get started this evening. Tonight is really exciting for me to be here with this group talking about not just, the past, but also what's coming in the future. And that is really exciting for me and all of the team members that are involved with Valley Wellness. So tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of things. I'm going to give just a really an overview of the history of the medical program here in New Jersey. And really, this presentation is timeline based. So it should give you a feeling of, what has transpired within the medical program here over the last 12 years in New Jersey, because the program started in 2010. So I'm going to talk at the end of the program about our education efforts through New Jersey Cannabis Certified. And a lot of the materials that are being presented here tonight are pulled from and collated from New Jersey Cannabis Certified. But I think that this is a great way to start tonight's presentation with what's going on in New Jersey and how did it start. And so here is a map of all of the existing ATCs, alternative treatment centers in the state. The program started in 2010 under Governor Corzine. He signed it into law on his last day of office, the medical law here in New Jersey. And the program started to expand under Governor Murphy when he took office in 2018. And you see the names of all the companies that exist here in New Jersey right now. Well, there's actually some more. We're going to talk about that again at the end of the program, but these are the existing 12 operators in the state. So, and they are vertically integrated. So I know we have a mix of individuals on the program tonight, some team members from Valley Wellness, some individuals that I know from the industry, lawyers, but I also see some community members. So I've tried to gauge the presentation for all levels of interest this evening. Then and now, we're starting a shift in New Jersey, and what once was is now changing hands. So those 12 operators, we have already seen a few of them actually change ownership. The first of which was Compassionate Care Foundation was sold to the Acreage, or what is now known as the Botanist. Greenleaf Compassion Center is now Ascend Wellness, and Garden State Dispensary is now AIR. Going back to what I said about the program starting in 2010 and being signed by Governor Corzine in his last day in office, the program really remained very stagnant under Governor Christie's administration. The conditions, the medical conditions that qualified individuals for medical cards within the state were very confined. And not until Governor Murphy took office in 2018 and signed Executive Order 6, which started the process of expanding the medical conditions that qualified individuals or patients for cards. And then we slowly saw those changes start to take effect in 2019, statutory changes through Executive Order 6, and then also through Jake Honig's law, which was passed in July of 2019. But these numbers at the bottom of the screen here. So look at the numbers. 2018, that's when Governor Murphy took office. There were 500 doctors enrolled in the program to certify patients for medical marijuana use. And there were only 17,000 patients in the program. That was after 8 years of the program's existence. Fast forward to 2022, there are 1,365 doctors enrolled in the program and 121,000 patients and growing. That's a really huge increase. So as I said, Jake Honig's law, or A20, was signed by Governor Murphy into law in July 2019. And this timing really matches up with the 2019 request for applications, which is where Valley Wellness, my company, applied for a permit and was recently awarded, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But A20 and Jake Honig's law is important for a couple of reasons. It really set the framework for the future adult use bill, the CREAM Act, which in 2 slides we're going to get to. But there was a push in 2019, in the summer of 2019, to pass a adult use bill. And that didn't quite make it over the finish line. And so A20 was really a compromise between passing an adult use bill and the legislature wanting to make something happen within the state. And really, A20, Jake Honig's law, did a few things that were really important to set the stage for what was going to happen in 2020 and 2021. And that is, number one, it established the Cannabis Regulatory Commission, and it expanded licensing, or cannabis business licensing. So we're probably all pretty familiar with what happened in November of 2020, and that is, we saw when you went to the polls to vote here in New Jersey, if you flipped to the other side of the ballot, you saw these constitutional amendment questions, and adult use cannabis passed with overwhelming support, in my opinion. And but even though we had this constitutional amendment, the legislature still had to act to pass a law by which adult use cannabis would operate or unfold within the state. I mean, this is a short snippet of what the constitutional amendment said, but it did not lay out any sort of framework for how the program or how adult use cannabis sales would unroll in the state. And while we all thought that after that constitutional amendment, everything would move relatively quickly, it did not. There was negotiation going on inside the legislature, and so we did not see this enabling statute or the enabling law passed until February 22nd, 2021. And that is a really important date to keep in mind, February 22nd, because a lot of timelines in the statute relate back to that particular date. So, for instance, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission under the statute had 6 months to enact their personal use rules and regulations, 6 months from that date. And then fast forward 6 months from the date that the personal use rules and regulations were enacted. That is supposedly the first date on which adult use sales will begin within the state. And I'm going to show everybody a timeline for adult use sales to begin before we end this evening's presentation. I'm not going to go through the details on all of this slide, but the slide really demonstrates that there was a lot going on behind the scenes in order to get that enabling statute passed. So we saw, yes, the CREAM Act, but there were 3 related bills that were passed as well that related to decriminalization, and also defining what actions and what penalties were going to be imposed for those under 21 that were found with cannabis. Related to that, there are also restrictions put on new restrictions put on police officers in terms of what they are able to, what facts they are able to utilize in approaching an individual under 21 that may be suspected of cannabis use. And so there was a lot of negotiation going on behind the scenes about what penalties and what facts would be applicable to police officers to be able to approach those under 21. And under the new law, the smell, whether or not it's the smell of burnt cannabis or otherwise, cannot be the basis to lead to reasonable suspicion to stop an individual under 21. There are also obligations placed on police officers to wear body cameras when approaching an individual under the age of 21 for suspected cannabis possession. So I'm going to mix it up a little bit here and talk about what is the definition of cannabis versus marijuana versus hemp versus synthetic cannabinoids. And it is important to know that cannabis is still illegal federally, but in the state of New Jersey, under the CREAM Act, cannabis is descheduled. So what is the difference between cannabis and marijuana? And this is going to be a state-by-state definition. In New Jersey, cannabis is the form of product that is legally sold from an adult use retailer or delivery service. Cannabis is not medical cannabis. Medical cannabis is actually defined as medical cannabis under the statute. Cannabis is also not marijuana. Within the industry, I think that it is very important to use the word cannabis versus marijuana, because there is definitely a negative connotation, a stigma attached to the word marijuana. And so I kind of keep that in the back of my mind, thinking marijuana refers to the black market substance or the illegal or illicit gray market product that an individual might obtain. Whereas cannabis is that which is obtained legally through an authorized retailer in the state. What is hemp? So cannabis, hemp, marijuana, they all fall under the same genus and species. However, hemp has been taken out of the definition of marijuana and cannabis legally under the 2018 Farm Bill. And so in 2018, the Farm Bill was passed and specifically defines hemp as being cannabis with under 0.3% THC. So as soon as any cannabis plant, because hemp is cannabis, as soon as any cannabis plant exceeds that threshold of THC, it is no longer going to be categorized as hemp and legal. It would be a federally illegal substance. So under the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp was actually removed from the Controlled Substance Act. The diagram on the right-hand side of the screen might be a little confusing as it relates to the definition of marijuana, cannabis, but I think that it's important to describe, it's an important picture in how to describe the difference between synthetic cannabinoids and cannabis. So you see on the far right-hand side of the screen, THC, CBD, CBN. Those are all different types of cannabinoids. And there are research is showing these days that there's over 100 different types of cannabinoids. So when we talk about cannabinoids, there are actually cannabinoids inside of our body, and those are the endogenous cannabinoids. And then you have exogenous cannabinoids, which come from the plant. So THC, CBD, CBN. And then you're going to have and then you're going to have those synthetic cannabinoids, which are marinol. These are cannabinoids that are manufactured in the lab to mimic cannabinoids. And so these synthetic cannabinoids are not a Schedule 1 substance like cannabis is under the federal law. So I like to show this diagram kind of leading up to the next slide, which opens up I like to show this slide and talk about the endocannabinoid system just very generally and briefly, because a lot of people don't understand that the endocannabinoid system exists within every single human being's body. And there is a growing amount of research that's being done on the endocannabinoid system every day. But really, I mean, this research started in full in like the 1980s-ish, and has been, there's a very famous researcher, an Israeli researcher, Raphael Mechoulam, who has really started and put the basis of the research forward for the endocannabinoid system. Actually, one of our team members here at Valley Wellness is Dr. Jehan Marcoux, and he is one of approximately 10 individuals in the United States that has a specialty, a PhD specialty in studying the endocannabinoid receptors. And so why is the endocannabinoid system so important when we talk about cannabis? It's because those cannabinoids, THC and CBD, have been shown to interact with the endocannabinoid receptors that are found within everybody's body. So CB1 and CB2 receptors, when you intake cannabis, whether or not that's the natural form of the plant or whether or not it's the synthetic form, marinol, it is going to interact with those receptors in the endocannabinoid system to form a response. And so for these particular medical conditions on the left-hand side, which are the New Jersey approved medical marijuana conditions, there is research demonstrating for each of these conditions a benefit when consuming cannabis, whether or not that's in the natural form of the product or the synthetic form, to assist patients with these particular conditions. So I struggled for a moment when I just was talking about the comparison between consuming natural plant products, cannabis, and versus synthetic cannabinoids. And I don't have any personal experience with synthetic cannabinoids, and I am not that educated on their form of action. But I can just go back and briefly talk about why I support the whole plant product, and that is really whole plant medicine. So I mentioned that there are over 100 cannabinoids with it that we know of, and maybe more. But it's not just one particular cannabinoid, let's say THC. It's how those cannabinoids interact with each other and then interact with the human body's ECS. And I am not a scientist, so that's about all I'm going to say on this slide. But it really is, I do believe in the theory of whole plant medicine, which is the way that the terpenes and the cannabinoids in that particular plant interact with your endocannabinoid system and with any particular condition that a patient may be suffering from. So transitioning back to the time frame and talking a little bit more about the CREAM Act, which was signed into law on February 22nd. I'm going to move a little bit quickly through the next couple of slides. I want to leave enough time for questions at the end and get to talk a little bit about Valley Wellness specifically. But there were very important consumer protections built in to the CREAM Act. So, and they're on the screen. I'm not going to read them, but basically, consumers cannot be denied basic rights because of cannabis use. That said, the CREAM Act also protects employers, private individuals, property owners, municipalities, giving them the permission and the ability to enact or make rules that allow them to determine what happens on their property. So, for instance, nothing in the CREAM Act requires an owner of private property from prohibiting consumption on that property. And this is important for landlord tenant, for individuals who may rent or live in an apartment complex. Even though cannabis, adult use cannabis, is going to be legalized in the state very soon, it is now decriminalized. Those living in a public setting are going to be restricted, likely, from using cannabis on that property. So it is important to keep these things in mind. So one of the great things that the CREAM Act did was mandate expungement of certain past marijuana or cannabis crimes. So they're listed on the right-hand side of the screen, but really what was very impressive is over the past year, the New Jersey Administrative Office of Courts worked, actually I would say the past 2 years, they worked very hard to institute a new automatic expungement portal through the Administrative Office of Courts. And as it says in the lower left-hand side of the screen, they did, in fact, automatically expunge over 300,000 marijuana cases. There's a lot to discuss with expungement. I would simply say, well, not simply. I would say that individuals eligible for automatic expungement should go back and check to make sure that that's actually something beneficial to them. Immigrants, there are reasons that that individuals may not want their records expunged. For instance, in immigration proceedings, you must bring your prior record and be able to demonstrate what that is and what happened to that case. So if that case is expunged, it becomes burdensome for that individual to then go and demonstrate what the prior offense was. So I think that there's some considerations that New Jersey should, like I said, consider, but they are really moving forward and it in a way to assist individuals, which is exciting. Another portion of the CREAM Act that is of interest to a lot of individuals is municipal authority. And the CREAM Act on February 22nd imposed a 6-month deadline on municipalities to decide whether or not they wanted to opt in or opt out of cannabis establishments in their borders. And I mean, the last 6 months occurred over the summer of 2021, and that's when a lot of town councils go on break, and they might not have that, you know, that second meeting on the last week of July and August. So we really did in the state of New Jersey see a little bit of a frenzy over the summer in terms of there are 565 municipalities in the state. I'm actually only aware of one municipality who did not, i.e., who failed to enact an ordinance within those 6 months. That town didn't do it. They did it on purpose, and they know that, you know, they likely only have 1 or 2 pieces of real estate in the town that would be even applicable or under the, you know, able to house a cannabis establishment. So I can't speak to exactly why they wouldn't enact an ordinance, but knowing that they only have a few relevant pieces of real estate, maybe they were comfortable with those cannabis businesses coming into town there. Long story short, New Jersey has always been home rule, and the personal use rules and regulations make that even more clear. And over the past meetings that the commission has held, the commission is going to defer to municipal authorities and what municipalities want. We're going to talk about that at the end of the presentation. In order to see adult use sales begin in the state, every single operator will have to have municipality approval. So those 12 operators, they each have 3 dispensaries, give or take. Every single location that they will have to have local approval to transfer to adult use sales. So the municipality holds a lot of sway in the cannabis business arena, as do these 6 individuals. And we saw, so I say their first meeting was on April 12th, 2021. So we're quickly approaching their 1-year mark in office. I would say these 6 individuals really overcame a monumental task, which was to write the new personal use rules and regulations. You know, the legislature had years, and when they wrote the CREAM Act, they were going off of 821, Jay Koenig's law. They had something to go off of. When these commissioners wrote the new personal use rules and regulations, they were doing so from scratch. I mean, they had other states to look to, and I do believe that the commission hired consultants to some degree to help write the rules and regs. They took commentary from stakeholders and shareholders, stakeholders in the state at every commission meeting. In fact, there's a commission meeting tomorrow at 1 p.m. I encourage everybody to tune in. It's likely to be a lively meeting. There is always approximately an hour or more of commentary at the end, again, by stakeholders. And that commentary is really important because it gives you an idea of what's happening in the industry. What are other companies? What are other individuals that are interested in getting into the industry? What are they doing? So, safety and equity is a major theme that we've seen throughout the commission, throughout every single meeting that the commission holds. And we see this as a theme in the personal use rules and regulations as well, specifically as it pertains to testing labs, manufactured products, and also the opportunities or availability of licenses to residents within the state. So I started out this presentation by talking about the fact that the 12 operators in the state right now are MSOs, multi-state operators that are vertically integrated. Vertically integrated means that the same company grows the cannabis, then manufactures it, and then sells it. So they have the whole supply chain. Well, for the first time right now, we see the establishment of standalone licenses. And this is really important from like a small company's perspective. We want entrance into the marketplace, into the cannabis industry. Number one, from individuals that have been affected by the war on drugs. Number two, from a diverse population of New Jersey residents. And if you're only going to license multi-state operators or vertically integrated companies, those those operations are multi-million dollar operations. It's not realistically feasible for somebody like me, somebody like you, to raise the money and be able to start a vertically integrated company. But it is much more reasonable that you or I from New Jersey would be able to get together the funding and the resources to apply for a standalone permit, which is exactly what Valley Wellness did in 2019. In preparing for what Valley Wellness was going to do, I said to myself, how can we be successful? I get a lot of questions. Why didn't you apply for Jersey City or another location with like high population? Or why didn't you go and start a CBD retail shop, a storefront that you could easily transition into cannabis? And my strategy, my theory was, how will Middle Valley Partners, how will Valley Wellness be successful? I'm an attorney and have experience working in highly regulated industries, but I didn't in 2018 and 19 have any experience in the cannabis industry. I also knew that central New Jersey, where I live, is completely underserved. And so I was like, where do I want a dispensary? And that's kind of how we ended up in Raritan, which again we'll talk about in a minute. But so going back to the licensing structure, the commission broke it down. Well, the CREAM Act broke it down, and then the commission issued an RFA, or a request for applications, for standalone licenses. And those standalone licenses get priority scoring or priority review based on these three categories. And these three categories are somewhat new and somewhat old. For instance, Valley Wellness is a WBE, or Women Business Enterprise Certified company, and we are thus a diversely owned business. But the concept of social equity business was actually installed by the commission in their personal use rules and regulations, because the commission saw a gap, or a gap in what the CREAM Act did. And so the commission said, how can we assist those that have been previously affected by the war on drugs? How can we assist them in entering the industry? And so what we saw, and here we go, in December of 2000, December last month, less than a month ago, the commission opened up the portal for new business applicants. Oh, sorry. And when they did that, that portal is going to categorize applicants based on their status, as I was just talking about in the last slide. So social equity applicants, diversely owned, and impact zones applicants are going to go to the top of the stack to review. So we're coming to the end here, and this is where I get excited talking about what happened last month. And Finally, on December 7th, the Commission announced the awardees, or the winners, from the 2019 request for applications. So for those that are tuning in and new, when a new cannabis business wants to apply for a permit, the state puts out a request for applications and we respond. The Commission, after having waited 2.5 years, applicants after having waited 2.5 years, the Commission awarded double the amount of permits that were expected. So on the left-hand side of the screen are the vertically integrated and cultivator awards. We have 14 new companies, and on the right-hand side, we have 30 new dispensaries. So what's interesting about just the industry at large and the transition that's going to be taking place over the next year is, right now, all of the businesses in New Jersey grow and sell their own cannabis. They are engaging in wholesale transactions between each other, but there are no standalone dispensaries in the state. We, Valley Wellness, really does hope to be one of the first standalone dispensaries to open within the state, but we have a lot of hurdles to overcome because the industry is so new, and because we will be, hopefully, one of the first standalone dispensaries to open. So the question that I have to answer for myself and everybody else that I talk to is, where are we going to get product from? And the existing operators in the state are definitely ramping up production, and I do believe that we will be able to obtain and negotiate contracts with those vertically integrated, and most of them are multi-state operators. So Valley Wellness will have product to put on our shelves, but what everybody is looking for is really that diversity of product. In New Jersey right now, I'm going to fast forward to this slide. We are so limited in the products that patients and in the future customers will have available. Really, we are limited to flour and these particular other types of products. So you see on the left-hand side a tincture, a lotion. Edibles are an interesting topic for New Jersey because right now generally they are prohibited, but we do see, we have seen for the past 5 years, lozenges, which in the middle of the screen here both come in pink and the white ones. And we are slowly starting to see the onboarding of additional types of lozenges. So you see here on the little bit on the right hand side, these bites. And it's interesting, these are being characterized as chewable lozenges, not gummies, because gummies are actually, under the language of the adult use rules, prohibited. So it will be interesting to see how the Commission expands product availability within the coming years, and with the onboarding of manufacturers, we will see new products come, not just flower products, but new products become available. The other interesting point, which I don't want to digress too much, we do have this manufacturing permit available in New Jersey, but we do not, in order for somebody to manufacture, let's say, a brownie or an edible, they have to be able to obtain extract, cannabis extract, to make that edible with. So whether or not they make that extract themselves or they buy it from somewhere, they have to get that extract. The equipment that is required to make extract from a flower product to an oil is a very expensive piece of equipment, and it takes a lot of knowledge in terms of know-how to operate. So while somebody may be able to go make a very tasty cannabis brownie or other cannabis edible, they have to be able, again, to obtain that extract from somewhere. And that's kind of, in my opinion, the missing link in the manufacturing department here in New Jersey. I know companies that have applied for manufacturing permits, but they still don't exactly know where they're going to obtain that extract from. Also, talking quickly about cannabis, like infused dinners. That's another question I get a lot from chefs that are interested in entering the industry. And again, there's a little bit of a disconnect in the rules and regs that hopefully will be fixed in the coming years, which is the individuals, again, unless you have a manufacturing permit, you cannot be retailing cannabis products to consumers. So you may be a very talented cannabis chef that works in the illicit or gray market, but again, until you obtain that manufacturing permit from the state of New Jersey, you won't be able to do so on a legal basis to the general public. So this is the last slide here, and I'm just going back to summarize, and then I'll take some questions. There are 3 ways we're going to see adult use cannabis happen in the state of New Jersey. 1, the existing operators in the state, those 12 operators, they likely are going to be the first ones to transition to adult use sales, I guess, within the next month. I'm excited. I hope you guys are too. I don't think that all 12 of them will be granted approval. They each have to apply individually, and just based on my knowledge where each company, each of those 12 operators is in the market, I think roughly 6 to 8 of those operators will be given approval in the next month or so to transition to adult use sales. You guys see that date on the right-hand side of the screen, February 1st, 2022. I mean, the commission has abided by some statutory timeframes, and they have missed others. They made a very important time. They did meet their very important time frame to adopt the adult use rules and regulations within 6 months, August 19th. Well, they have 6 months from that date to allow adult use sales to begin within the state, which brings us to approximately February 1st. So February 1st is like right around the corner. Again, like I said, I'm excited. It remains to be seen what will actually happen. I think, in my opinion, the date's probably going to get pushed back about a month or 2. Maybe we'll see sales start on March 1st. The second way that we will see adult use sales begin is by the 44 new operators in the state that were recently awarded permits. Like I said, my goal is to have Valley Wellness up and operational very quickly. We are incentivized to become operational quickly because we have to operate in the medical market for 1 year before we can transition to adult use sales. So again, incentivized to become operational quickly. And then the final way for adult use businesses is the commission on November 9th, actually, they issued the notice of application that's currently ongoing. December 15th, the portal, the brand new application portal, opened for cannabis cultivators and manufacturers and testing labs. On March 15th, the portal becomes active for dispensaries, and that's a huge date. I know a lot of companies, a lot of small companies like me, like Valley Wellness was in 2019, that are out there preparing to apply. And I wish all of you guys luck. So we are finishing up for this evening. I want to just talk briefly about plans for Valley Wellness. This is the depiction that we submitted with our application in 2019. I do think that there will be some changes to this floor plan because over the past 2.5 years, a lot has changed within the industry. So I think that we're going to be moving to a fulfillment station model, which means that we likely will not have product on the dispensary floor. We're going to be fulfilling orders in the back, whether or not that means that you submit an order online or you come into the store to purchase directly. But we're working through a couple of workflow. We're working through the workflow of the dispensary now. We are going to be located on the Somerville Circle, which is the Somerville Circle. It's basically 2 or 3 little boroughs, but we are going to be located in Raritan Borough on Route 202. We're right next door to Bridgewater, very close to the Bridgewater Mall, and I'm excited to really get going. It's been a very long wait the past 2.5 years working out of my guest room, which a lot of you guys saw before I got the virtual background going. I'm really excited to go to work every day, be around other individuals, get to know the patients that are coming to our store, and then gear up for adult use, which is literally going to be around the corner. Everything in this industry moves. We talk about dog years or cat years, like 1 for every 7. The industry moves so quickly. I'm just really grateful to the commission to have been awarded a provisional permit, and I am very excited to get to work. I do know that there are a couple team members on the call tonight, so I did just want to give them a shout out. Number 1 is Cynthia Hohen. She is our Chief Compliance Officer. Cynthia is the former Chief Compliance Officer for Atlantic Health System and currently is doing consulting work for a lab. And I have relied on Cynthia many times during the application and beyond in terms of preparing for regulatory compliance. So I'm excited to have Cynthia as part of the team, as well as Pam Frank, who I think is on this evening, who is our VP of Sustainability. Pam has an amazing knowledge of environmental issues, specifically solar and electric vehicles. So I really look forward to working with Pam as well. And last but not least is Tony Gallo, who has assisted me in so many ways beyond the security portion of the dispensary, but also just being a friend and colleague and offering general support in the industry. So, and there are many other Valley Wellness team members that really helped make this picture that are going to help make this picture a reality. So thank you to everybody, and you guys can take yourselves off mute and ask me any questions.
Oh, well, someone just wrote something in the chat, which I will get to once I read all of that from Gene. But thank you to Neil, who described the Entourage Effect, which says, according to Wired, it says THC achieves its full effects only when it rolls with a crew of other compounds. So that's a reference to our earlier discussion about THC and its effect on the body. Sarah, I would just like to ask you a question about potency. It's a question going long way back, that retail potency may be different than illicit potency. Can you say anything about that?
Well, I think that it's important. I don't know about illicit potency. I mean, it depends on where you're. I can't speak to that, but I think that what's important to kind of take into consideration and realize, cannabis we're talking about a medical dispensary, and even adult use consumers, a significant portion of them are self-medicating for whatever issue they may have. Cannabis is medicine. So I think that it is very important to, and there are rules in the personal use rules and regulations established by the commission that require transparency in testing and providing that information to consumers. So I believe I actually just learned about a really cool integration technique. So for online ordering, there is actually now the ability to link with a barcode to the COA, or the certificate of analysis at the, so when you click on a product, you would then be able to click directly on the certificate of analysis from the testing lab to see, you know, exactly what came up in that test. So I think transparency in testing is really important. I know that didn't directly answer the question, but and it goes to show, like, the commission in their first meetings, all their primary focus is on testing, was on testing, and so it is important.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Jean in the chat has a question about cannabis being held at the same standard as alcohol providers and people using it while driving, and he wants to know about blood testing as well. I apologize, Jean, there's a whole lot that you wrote, and I will try to read more of it while Sarah addresses these initial concerns.
So so when I was going back a little while ago, and I was talking about consider facts that police can or can't take into consideration when affecting a stop based on cannabis. And those factors actually do not come into play when you're talking about driving under the influence. So a police officer is given more leeway to affect, let's say, an arrest for suspicion of driving under the influence of marijuana, whereas if they were approaching an underage individual on the street based solely on the smell of marijuana. What I'm getting at is there are there were rules put into place to allow police officers to continue to effect arrests for DWI, or driving while under the influence of cannabis. There are, under the CREAM Act, there is something called a drug recognition expert, or DRE. And there's something similar laid out in the adult use rules and regulations for workplace impairment experts. And these individuals are hypothetically going to be qualified by the state to respond to calls to establish impairment, roadside or otherwise. There is no scientific test, such as like the intoxilizer or a portable breath test, that can match what the portable breath test does. So there is no test that exists now that can gauge what a person's intoxication is. And intoxication is not even a good word to use when you're talking about cannabis. I'm not sure about the blood test. So maybe you can clarify that question a little bit more. I don't want to go in circles, and I don't think I'm doing a very great job of answering
That,
that question.
that's fine. I think the important thing that Jean wanted to know is, are you willing to use your influence to get legislation passed similar to alcohol laws that will protect the public from irresponsible use?
Yes, absolutely. In terms of my influence, I think that there is what I have seen in other states. For instance, even just recently, I was driving up to Massachusetts, and there are campaigns, I assume by the state, that advise people against driving while high. We do the same things in terms of DWI. You see signs on the road while you're driving, the police put them up: don't drive while intoxicated. So I absolutely support and will absolutely, I mean, I am a mother of two young children, so I have to come to terms with, I have to find a way to explain that to my children and make sure that it is unavailable to them as well. So I see the I see my role as an educator and as a business owner and as a mother being very important. Number one, keeping cannabis out of the hands of young children. And number two, protecting the public from driving while high. I generally do believe, and there are studies to support cannabis in states where cannabis is legal, children have less access to it. Regulating cannabis and making it less accessible on the black market helps take it out of the hands of our children. That's what I believe.
Thank you. It's excellent points. And Donald also wanted to ask, has cannabis legalization in Colorado and Washington been successful after many years?
I cannot say that I am an expert in what has happened in those states. I know that generally they have each suffered their own hiccups along the way. I know that there is a general concern, or was a general concern in New Jersey, about having too much product. And I know that that happened in Oregon. I'm not sure if it's still an ongoing problem, but where there was too much legal cannabis, that legal cannabis was actually being circulated back to the black market. So I know that that is something that the legislature and the commission is taking into consideration when determining whether or not to limit the number of cannabis businesses within the state. So I would say that's the one thing that I would look out for, and I know that the state is looking out for, and why the state might potentially eventually say, okay, we're not going to have any more cannabis businesses. That we're not at that point right now. It's relatively open right now. There is no limit. There was no time frame on when you could apply, but eventually, probably the CRC, the commission, will shut down the application and say, okay, we're going to take this many retailers, we're going to take this many cultivators, because they don't want a glut in the market that could cause individuals, or could cause that product to flow back to the black market.
Thank you. And John has a question about Valley Wellness. He says, why not just wait a year to convert your existing permit to adult use retail? Is one longer more expensive than the other?
Yeah, so the commission requires us. We can convert within 1 year, but they will require us to demonstrate that during that 1 year we adequately served, that we did our job to serve medical patients. And why not? I mean, from a business perspective, we can operate successfully within a medical market. So why not try and open? Furthermore, the commission wants us to open and serve medical patients. The commission will not allow us to sit still for a year and then convert.
Okay, thank you. And Mesh says, or asks, what steps should an average citizen take to get started with getting into the cannabis industry?
Best question. I love it. It's tough. I I don't I don't start out like sugarcoating it to anybody that I have these conversations with. I tell people that are really interested, and you're here tonight, you're doing the first right thing, which is get involved in the industry. Attend these types of events, get on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn and see who I follow, see what kind of events I go to or events I like, go to those events. Going to local New Jersey cannabis events, really those, I mean, they're growing now, but when I was starting in 2018 and 19, they were events hosted by New Jersey Cannabis Insider, which is run by NJ.com. It's a great platform for those that are new and want to make contacts. And then once you kind of get your foothold, understanding where New Jersey is, unfortunately, it is important to have a lawyer on your team. And it's because the cannabis industry is a highly regulated industry that is currently run by these rules and regulations. So if you are a normal person, a lay person, it can be a little cumbersome to determine where you fit within the rules and regs and where you fit within the application process. So a lawyer is going to be able to fast track your education and say, okay, you can fit here, here, or here. Now, what I tell individuals, lawyers are expensive. I understand that. I know that. So when you are talking to lawyers, when you're interviewing lawyers, I like to tell individuals, find the lawyer that is going to give you the tools you need to go out and do the work yourself. Don't hire the lawyer that's going to do the work for you. Hire the lawyer that's going to tell you how to do the work yourself. You know, going to a town council meeting, calling the mayor, talking to the planning board. These are all things that a lawyer could do for you, but they are also things that you can do for yourself, and the lawyer can prepare you for that. And then the lawyer can also help make recommendations for some sort of application consultant. The application process is very burdensome and very detailed. Unless you have operated in another state, the application process requires you to submit standard operating procedures for approximately 10 different functions. And so again, for a layperson, it will be hard to get those things together. Find a lawyer that's willing to help you through the process, but by telling you what to do. And then find a consultant that is going to help provide you with those standard operating procedures and other documents that are necessary for the application.
Thank you for clarifying that. And Jean, with a follow-up to the previous conversation, did cite the statistic from AAA that in the state of Washington, those who test positive for marijuana after a fatal crash has doubled from about 9% to 18% since the state legalized it in 2012. So there is that to consider.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Andrew?
So Jean cited a statistic from AAA, which concluded that the number of drivers in Washington state who test positive for marijuana after a fatal crash has doubled from about 9% to 18% since the state legalized it in 2012.
I would love to see that study. I wonder how often they tested individuals for marijuana prior to its legalization, because obviously individuals want to know post-legalization what the effect of cannabis is. But again, my question would be for how long and when was the study done prior to legalization, what those numbers were. I can't speak to it without reviewing the study.
Okay, well, it's a difficult conversation, but John did say, FYI, testing positive for THC does not mean that you are high. It means you consumed it within a few days.
Thank you, John. And John's a fellow attorney who I know. And actually, that he is 100% correct. And that was the first thing that passed through my mind before I said I hadn't talked about the study. But it's absolutely correct. But it still goes back to when was the study done beforehand? I mean, But yes, John is correct. Just for anybody else that's still tuning on, cannabis can last in your system for 30 days or more. So I could consume cannabis tonight and it could show up in my system for 30 days. Does that mean that I'm high tomorrow night when I go drive to my son's soccer practice? No, it does not.
Okay, thank you. And does anyone else have any questions? And Jean, we appreciate all
I
of your
do.
questions.
I have questions.
Yes,
Hello.
please ask. Yes.
Okay. Super. Hi, my name is Erica Dish.
Hey,
Thank you, Sarah. This was really, really helpful, and thank you, Andrew, for facilitating this. Okay. Capital raise. I'm obviously you're not going to feel comfortable releasing that information, but
I'll
any
tell
idea?
you. What do you want to know? How much money it takes?
Yeah, exactly.
So for a dispensary?
Yep.
So I would say roughly $1 million. I will tell you that I raised about $400,000 pre-license, meaning that I raised $400,000 from family and friends to be able to apply for the permit. And that money was mostly spent to apply for the permit. Could you do it cheaper? Probably.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt. Is the permit the application or something different?
Correct. I raised $400,000 to apply for the permit.
Which is okay. I got it. All right. Okay. Good for
And
you.
then,
That's awesome.
yeah, thank you. And then we raised about another $600,000, and that sat in escrow. So we raised about $1 million prior to applying for the permit. I
Mhm.
spent about $400,000, and then I had $600,000 in escrow, which we're using right now to start build out of the dispensary. And I probably need about another 500,000. So that totals 1.5 million. So 1 to 1.5.
Okay. Where are you going to be on the circle? Don't tell me you're going to be in that old motel. Um,
No,
congrat
we're gonna be sharing the building with Unita Appliance. It's an appliance store.
Terrific. You
Yeah.
know what I throw out there? I'm sure the whole WeWorks, the LifeWorks in Bridgewater
I'm
might
not
be.
sure. Well,
Um,
Bridgewater is highly against cannabis.
oh,
They are
really?
a big no, and they have been for many years. And then they re-upped during those 6-month municipality window. They re-upped on their no vote. So Raritan Borough is about Raritan Borough has about 8,000 people, so it's very small. It's like a pin drop, and Bridgewater is much larger.
Okay. I had one other question because I don't want to dominate the forum. Um, Obviously, I'm a woman. I am a white woman. Um, what, without being in any way sexist or racist or whatever, uh, what's the, hmm, how does one define a minority as far as business ownership?
Oh, well, that's very easy. You can go to the Department of Treasury website and look at their definition of WBE, MBE, so Women Business Enterprise, Minority Business Enterprise, and
I'm
then
sorry, could you
disabled.
just say that one more time? The acronym is just, I can't type that
Yeah,
fast.
so uh, WBE is Women Business Enterprise,
Okay.
and
Yep.
MBE is Minority Business Enterprise. And these are, if you just Google MBE certificate New Jersey, it will probably bring you to the Department of Treasury, the State of New Jersey Department of Treasury website, which is where you apply for these credentials.
Got it.
And they will define for you what that means.
Great.
So, for instance, for WBE, yes,
Mhm.
you have to be a woman, but you also have to own and operate the company. So I have to own 51% of the company, which I do, and then women have to operate it. And same thing for minority business enterprise. You have to own 51%, and then minorities actually have to operate it.
And are you able, do you have your place staffed already?
No. We have about, realistically, we have about 6 to 9 months of build out and preparation. So I'm probably going to be looking to start hiring, say, like midsummer.
Okay. I'm part of a family-owned distillery in Hopewell in Mercer County. So I feel your pain as far as legislation because alcohol is so highly regulated and so difficult to navigate at times. Challenging, not
Erica,
difficult.
you can feel free to take my email address at the bottom of this and shoot me an email if you
I'm,
wanted to
I'm,
connect with me
I'm
personally. I'd be
planning to. I'm definitely planning to. Okay, I don't want to monopolize any more of your time.
no,
Thank you
no,
so much.
but please, let's connect offline.
Will do. Perfect. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Erica.
Okay, great. And Mesh says, what about the cost for related cannabis business, like a possible delivery service or maybe a party bus?
I love the idea of a party bus. I definitely want to be on that with this entire group. I don't think that it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be coming down the pipeline in New Jersey anytime soon. Delivery also, New Jersey made a big push for delivery service, and I was really excited to see that. But at the same time, there are some issues with delivery that I see. Number one being that uh, dispensaries are allowed to conduct their own deliveries. So therefore it limits the applicability of the delivery service. So that's one thing. I cannot speak to as accurately to the startup costs for a delivery service as the dispensary because I haven't lived that or breathed it. I would say that it is significantly less because you don't have to have I mean, you might have to have real estate to house the product, but it's going to be much smaller. You're not looking at a retail facility. You're looking at fewer employees. So your startup costs are going to be significantly lower. Can I tell you what they are? No. If I had to guess, I'd say in the range of 500,000.
Okay, so significant investment there. Are there any other questions that anyone has? No? Okay, well, I would like to thank you, Sarah, for your enthusiasm and for enlightening us on all of this information. We really
I know,
appreciate you
I'm so
coming and
sorry, Andrew, about my technical difficulties. It stresses me out. I really dislike my computer.
oh, it's fine. It all worked out very well. And
Okay.
thank you to all the lawyers who came. We appreciate your joining us and your crew members, your staff.
Yeah, no, it was really great to see everybody on tonight. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Mercer County, for hosting me, and thanks everybody for tuning in tonight.
Okay, everyone stay safe in the snow, and thank you for coming.
Bye, everybody.
I have a